suspects are being one case involves. The FBI is now offering $100,000 to see if the police are releasing.
Welcome to Missy Mysteries. I'm your host, Keely, and this is a true crime and paranormal podcast. Today's episode is about a woman who lost her identity over 40 years ago. I will be talking about the Frederick County Jane Doe. She is most commonly called the cheerleader in the trunk. Now, I have told the story of one other Jane Doe before, but she was later found to be Wilma June Nissen after over 20 years of being buried as Jane Doe. While researching, I found the story of the Frederick County Jane Doe, and I knew I wanted to tell her story because she deserves to have her name back. Every time we share her story or her face, there is a chance that someone could recognize her and give that back to her. There are so many missing people in the US alone that have families waiting for them to come home. They have people who are putting pictures of them everywhere and sharing them whenever they can. I truly realize how many Jane and John Does are out there, and it's upsetting because they could be the faces behind these photos that we are seeing, and we just don't know it yet. But they deserve to be brought home, and they deserve to have their names back. The Jane Doe I am talking about today, she is most commonly called the cheerleader in the trunk. Her story starts long before we even know, but her story we do know starts on August 24th, 1982. On this day in August, a couple of mushroom hunters were hiking the Gambrill State Park in Frederick, Maryland, in hopes to find mushrooms, but what they found was much different. The Gambrill State Park sits on the ridge of Catoctin Mountain in Frederick, Maryland. It has 16 miles of trail surrounded by thick forest used by visitors for hiking, mountain biking, horse riding, and even camping in the designated camping sites that are open from April to October every year. This particular day, in August of 1982, the mushroom hunters were hiking this park and stumbled upon a steamer trunk that was poorly covered by some debris. Steamer trunks started to be used by those traveling on steamboats to protect their belongings while getting on and off the boats. These trunks are very heavy duty and became popular to use in any form of traveling and even storage. Out of curiosity and in hopes to find something vintage, the mushroom hunters opened the trunk, thinking that's what they were going to find. And instead, what was inside of the trunk was a skeletonized human remains with long brown hair, covered with a dark red towel. The hunters immediately hiked back to the phone and called the Frederick Police Department. The police arrived at the scene and the remains were brought to the local coroner. The local coroner's initial examination revealed that the remains belonged to a white woman, about 5'2" to 5'6". They believe she could have weighed between 100 to 130 pounds, and she had shoulder-length, wavy brown hair, but police reports indicate her hair was dyed from a natural reddish-brown auburn color due to the body hair found on her remains. She had no clothes or personal effects with her, meaning at the time of her death, she was put in the trunk with just that dark towel found with her. They estimated that she could have been as young as 17 years old and as old as 45 years old. On the day she was found, she had been in the trunk for at least 10 months, but possibly as far back as 10 years, meaning that her time of death was between 1972 and 1982. Her cause of death is unknown, but her skeleton does reveal a possible cause of death. The bones at the base of her skull that connect to her jaw were broken, and one of her cervical or upper neck vertebrae between the C1 and the C7 was darkened by blood. These injuries could have happened post-mortem, but they are consistent with strangulation. Her cause of death is unknown, but the police were able to rule her death a homicide just due to the nature of how her remains were found. Her remains and her teeth were able to tell a bit about her life before this point, and hopefully can give her identity back to her. The forensic anthropologist in her case is named Dr. J. Lawrence Angel. He was a pretty well-known anthropologist and is known as one of the nation's leading forensic anthropologists and an expert on human bones. His work on her case led to the name the cheerleader in the trunk. Her pelvis had wear that's consistent with people who have participated in sports such as gymnastics, figure skating, and cheerleading. Because of this, that's why she was named the cheerleader in the trunk. Her lumbar region or lower spine shows signs of a condition called spondylosis. also known as pars effect. This is when small stress fractures are created on the spine and the pars interarticulars of the lumbar vertebrae from frequent use. It develops in young adults that participate in sports like football, dance, gymnastics, soccer, and genetics can play a factor in pars defect or spondylosis. This condition can be asymptomatic, but could cause mild back pain, pain in the legs, and even numbness in the legs. It's very unlikely that Jane Doe was ever diagnosed with this in her life, but she could have had lower back pain since her spine does show pretty severe spondylosis. Her feet showed that at one point she had broken a toe, which could happen really doing anything. I mean, I've broken a toe getting it stepped on by like a Great Dane. I've broken toes many of ways, so it could really honestly happen doing anything. Her feet did show signs that she frequently wore high heels. So wearing high heels can cause wear on the ankles, knees, and the lumbar region, including a shaping of the feet. Her skull was characterized as an Old American. This meant that her family had likely been in the United States for at least 3 generations. This doesn't mean that she wasn't born outside of the US, but it does mean that she was raised here and has family that has lived here for at least 3 generations. Her skeleton showed signs that she was very well nourished in life, and her skull roundness and broadness at the base of the skull showed signs of nourishment along with a full development of her pelvis. Her teeth showed that she had a fair amount of dental work done throughout her life. She had multiple silver fillings, a root canal, and 2 gold crowns, one on her front left and one on her front right. She also had 2 wisdom teeth growing in, pushing her other teeth, which could have caused her pain while they were growing in. Her dental chart is very extensive and unique. This gave investigators hope because her dental record was so unique. In her case, it didn't help, and they couldn't find any dental records to match. Theories around why her dental records didn't match was that she possibly could have been going to a dental school for the work, because some of the work did look not like a professional did it, like it was done in a school, which don't keep records, they do give you your records. She also could have left the country for some of her dental work, and this would be harder for the police to gain access to those. The time that Dr. J. Lawrence Angel really took examining Jane Doe showed us a few of the things with what he found. She lived an active life. She could have been possibly into sports such as cheerleading, dancing, gymnastics, and mixed with her being well-nourished, along with very extensive dental work, it is believed that Jane Doe came from a middle-class or wealthy family, since they would have been able to afford healthy meals, the equipment and clothes for sports, and extensive dental work. I'm going to go over a little bit of the information from earlier, but now we can kind of piece it all together with the forensic report. She was a white woman, around 5'2" to 5'6". Most likely 100 to 130 pounds and pretty lean. She had dyed shoulder-length wavy brown hair, naturally a reddish auburn color. She was placed between 17 to 45 years old, but more than likely she was in her early 20s to mid-20s. And her time of death was between 1972 and 1982. After these findings, Jane Doe's information and original composites were shared, and tips came flooding into investigators. None of these tips did lead to her identity, and she has been shared on TV shows, which every time she shared on TV shows, tips flood back into investigators. Investigators have never, even with TV shows and their initial reports, they have not been able to identify Jane Doe yet. Investigators during these tips have ruled out 19 women and girls for the identity of Jane Doe. Many of these women are still missing, and I'm going to read their names at the end of this episode if you'd like to stick around to get to know them a little better. Jane Doe has had many composites made of her throughout the over 40 years that she has been marked Jane Doe. In 1983, the investigators released that initial 2 composites of her. One was in her 30s and one where she was a little bit older. In 2012, a man named John Stahl released another composite of Jane Doe. This composite showed a younger woman in her mid-20s, unlike the 1983 composite. 2012 was a big year, and not just because of this composite. During this year, Jane Doe's DNA was also taken, and unfortunately not enough was taken to build a DNA profile on Jane Doe. Now in 2013, 2 composites were released by Carl Kopelman and another artist. Unfortunately, none of the composites in 2012 or 2013 would not lead to credible tips. In 2020, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released their own composite of Jane Doe. With it, they also narrowed down when they believe her time of death was. And instead of 10 months before she was found to 10 years, they narrowed it down from 5 to 3 years before she was found in August of 1982. As of April of 2022, which is when I am recording this, Jane Doe's identity is still lost. Currently, the only evidence investigators have to identify her is her dental records and the composites of her. For the steamer trunk that Jane Doe was actually found in, I couldn't find anything on it, or if police ever got anything from it. Same as the towel she was found with, nothing was ever said. I do know forensic evidence was different at the time, and I'm not sure if investigators would have thought of these things too much to really test or run them, but who knows if they did, and if they did, what it will tell us about her life or her death. Jane Doe's case is very popular with internet sleuths, and many theories have been put out there, but these are some of the most popular. The first being that she was never actually an athlete, but a very hard manual labor worker. These jobs could be factory work, construction, any job where she is bending a lot or lifting heavy objects. People leave these jobs without any notice often, and it could explain why no job may have reported her missing. This also supports no dental records, because she would have gone to a school for cheaper dental work. She could have been a dental student. There are many dental schools in Maryland, and if she knew someone that went to dental school, then her teeth could have been done at the dental school for free. This one I found was most popular. She could have been an exotic dancer. These jobs are very hard on women's bodies. It is dancing, which is a very physical sport. In the 80s, this definitely wasn't a safe job that could have made her a target for men with bad intentions. The job at the time was not likely to protect her. Exotic dancers could walk off the job and not come back. They would think nothing of it. It would support her wearing heels all the time, as well as she may have worn a lot of makeup, making it hard for others to recognize her in these composites. She could have been a circus performer. This would support the wear on her body, the use of heels, and that she may not have been from this area. This would mean that as a performer, she just didn't show back up, and the circus possibly just thinking she left. It would explain her dental records, since her dental work would be done all over the different states. I don't know if this time how many circuses came through, but this could be something to look into. Although from what I have heard, circus employees, since they do travel together and it can be dangerous, watch out for each other and take care of each other. I don't know who first came up with this theory, especially because so many theories are in her case, but this theory is actually an episode of the TV show Bones. Bones is a TV show about a forensic anthropologist and a detective, and they solve cold cases. Possibly the person watched this episode and forgot maybe they watched the episode and then put the theory out there. That was just my thought when I was reading this theory. There are a lot of theories, but the last one I want to touch on is she could have been a victim of someone who picked her up as a hitchhiker or a trucker. There are main freeways that pass through that area with a lot of main roads. She could have been picked up in a different state or city and dumped in the state park. This would also mean we do not know how long the person had her or where they picked her up from before they took her life and put her in that state park. As I mentioned earlier, 19 women and girls have been ruled out as Jane Doe, and there are so many more suggested but not ruled out. 3 that truly stand out to me the most, I'm going to kind of go over them, and these are still missing women. Lynn Burdock, she went missing from Florida, Massachusetts in April of 1982 when she was 18 years old. She went missing from the store where she was working as a cashier. And the last person she spoke to was her cousin. She was on the phone with her cousin and she hung up because a customer came in. Her store was found robbed, abandoned, and all of her belongings were still there. Lynn was 5'4" and weighed 115 pounds. She had long brown hair, blue eyes, and wore big round glasses. She fits the height, date of disappearance, age, and physical description of Jane Doe. Lynn has been submitted to the investigators to be compared, but there is no update if they have compared their dental records yet. Anne Lillian Riggin, in May of 1982, went missing from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, when she was 25 years old. She was 5'3", weighed 105 pounds, had brown hair, and blue eyes. Anne disappeared from her home, and this is unfortunately about the only information we know about her. Her age, height, and disappearance date match Jane Doe as well. Her face shape does seem to match Jane Doe's face shape, but Anne had a broken collarbone that healed, and it's never said that Jane Doe had an injury like this because you can still see broken bones that have healed on the skeleton. She has also been suggested to the investigators, but they don't know if they have compared her dental records. Mary Cook Spencer went missing from Prince Frederick, Maryland in March of 1981. She was 26 years old, 5'6", and 140 pounds. She had brown hair and brown eyes and wore glasses. She went missing while on a shopping trip. Her Mercedes was found in a restaurant parking lot abandoned with the keys in the ignition. Mary had recently gotten married and wasn't believed to be missing on her own accord. Her age, height, and disappearance date plus location do match Jane Doe. She has been suggested to the investigators, but we do not know if they have compared her dental records yet. As of now, we do not know where investigators are with all these new suggestions, and we do not know who Jane Doe is right now. I will be sharing all the composites with you on Misty Mystery social media, as well as photos of Anne, Lynn, and Mary. I do want to give these women their own episode, so please keep an eye out for that. If you do have any information or tips to help find Jane Doe's identity, it can be left with the Frederick Police Department at 301-600-2100 or 301-600-2101. Tips can also be left with the Maryland Chief Medical Examiner at 410-333-3250. For now, I want to thank you for listening and supporting Misty Mysteries. If you like the podcast, please share with everyone you think may like this podcast. Word of mouth will help me more than you know. Let me know how I am doing by reviewing Misty Mysteries or letting me know on my website or social media. As a reminder, Misty Mysteries offers 2 additional episodes on Patreon, Patreon-exclusive stickers, the ability to help me choose future episode topics, and a discount to Misty Mystery merchandise. I truly appreciate any support. I hope you have an amazing week. Stay safe, stay hydrated. I'm now going to end this episode reading the names of the 19 women rolled out as Jane Doe. Barbara Mickler, Gina Hall, Andrea Coyle, Michelle Rittenbach, Sherry Early, Susan Chappell, Rachel Garden, Emma Vaughn, Anne Manchester, Mary Blee, Marie Baca, Janae Skirman, Valerie Kuka, Judith O'Donnell, Kathleen Durst, Kathleen Anderson, Nancy Snow, Betty Roberts, and Zita Gutierrez. Gutierrez was a possible match in 2016, but unfortunately her dental records did not match. All these women are still missing and also deserve to have their stories told.